right, now we're going to bring on the one, the only Miss HR Disruptor herself, Miss Jan Barlow.
Yay!
There she is.
Gang.
Hello.
Hey, ladies, thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be
Kim.
together
I
again
am
with you.
so excited to have you on. And I just want to say, I loved hearing about Scott's program because people underestimate, and mental health recovery is part of mental health. It is.
Oh,
And
yeah.
recovery can be from anything, guys. It's not just drugs and alcohol. Like you
Mm-mm.
said, overeating, abuse, all kinds of things. There's all kinds of different recovery and changing life patterns. Michaela,
Well,
what are your thoughts about
it's
that?
a healing journey. What we're
Right.
really talking about here is healing and I really liked what Scott said about finding your own path. That's what
Mhm.
it's really about is finding what works for you to heal, what you need to heal. And that's a journey that is very amazing, very difficult, very trying, and all around wonderful to take.
Yes, it is. It is. And so, Jan, you and I have talked about we met because of a mental health post,
Yes,
right?
yes, I love it. You know, when I think about Michaela, when you said about journey, I think about when I transitioned from my position back in 2008, crash and burn. You talk about palms peeling, hair falling out, trying to fit a round peg in a square hole. And hello, can you please give me better living through chemistry here?
Yeah.
It was a situation where I didn't even know I was going through adrenal burnout. So we think it's all in our head. Well, that's where everything is, right? I mean, our
Right.
reality starts in your head, right? Your perception of your
100%.
reality.
Yeah.
So, just even through people experiencing job transition, I
Yeah.
mean, that just created a domino in my bubble. So when you were so authentic,
100%.
Catherine, in your post, and that was that like-mindedness to come together. And Michaela, you geek out. You and I geeked out on the phone about mental and neuroscience. I mean, we could sit here and talk all day about that, right?
Right. It's fascinating. And I think, and I love that we're talking about the journey of it. And I want to relate this to work. So, as Jan talked about, the first we're going to talk about today with Jan, job seekers and people that are currently employed and the stresses that they're feeling and what we can do about it. Right. Because
Yeah.
that's the whole point here is to talk about how you can get help.
When
And
you get scrambled, right? I mean, when you're
yes,
in job transition or you get any change, because the brain is wired to resist, right? Right,
right.
Michaela? I mean, that's how we're dialed in. And so when you're in transition, you for like 90 days, you feel like you're all scrambled.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's
I
true.
mean,
It's true. And I think, Michaela, I want to get your opinion on this. So when people are having these, you're stressed, you don't know where your next paycheck's coming from, all of these different things going on, what are some of the symptoms that you would think would be most common? And then how can people get resources to help?
Anxiety and uncertainty, like Jan said, scrambled. I think that was a good word to
That is a
use.
good word.
Um, Very descriptive word to use for this situation because what's going to happen is there's going to be a certain amount of panic for the ability to be able to provide for oneself, especially if it goes on for, like you said, months. So there's definitely going to be a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. Depression can also hit when I've talked about learned helplessness a lot, and I think it applies here too.
Mhm.
That dynamic that hits when you try and try and try and you still cannot find ways to do for yourself and fulfill your own needs.
Right.
And as far as resources, um, I don't. Do you want me to talk about counseling resources or just things in general you can do for
In general,
yourself?
let's start with in general
Okay,
because not everybody wants to start with counseling. So what are some other
agree.
resources that they can use?
Um, a lot of times it sort of goes back to again what Scott said is finding what helps you heal, what helps you personally on your own path in your own world. Um, so I guess what the place to start is with yourself. What just sit with yourself and figure out what you need, and that can be difficult to do, and that's why people usually seek out counseling because it's difficult to know what you need without the other person sort of as
Right.
a mirror. And
Right.
clients a lot of times will sit with me and say, "Why didn't I realize that?" And I'm like, because you can't see yourself. I'm sitting here seeing a
Right.
whole other world that
Right.
you're sort of blind to. So yeah, I'll stop talking now and just sort of like y'all feed off of that. But that's really my thoughts as of right now.
You know, that's exactly what you said, Michaela. That's what I always tell people. You can't be, first of all, it's called self-perception theory. We cannot be objective about ourselves, plain and simple. So don't try. Don't get into the ego. Oh, I know myself. Yes, you know the 5%, but we're not dialed to be, we're not made to be objective about ourselves. It is what it is, right?
Right. And I think now I want to get into too on the other side, right? So Jan, you and I both work on the other side, have or are currently working on the other side of the hiring desk, right?
Yeah.
And I've had not only my own mental health, concerns that have come up, but I've worked with employees that had some very detrimental things happen to them. Spousal loss, a child with drug problems. That's very stressful for a parent. I can't even imagine. I've seen, all kinds of different symptoms come up, trauma, severe PTSD. When I say severe, people have all different ideas in their head about what PTSD looks like. And I have seen it caused from different things, both from veterans and also from other types of trauma. Some people think PTSD is only for veterans. It's not. PTSD can be from all different types of trauma.
You can get into an accident, a car accident, and you automatically have it, right? I mean,
absolutely. And sexual assault. I've had to walk an employee through that on the professional side. That was a tough one. So I want to talk about what we can do on this side of the desk to help the other person. So Jan, do you have any examples, stories about this?
Thank you so much, first of all, for caring enough to bring this topic up. And, what I first think about is when I worked at a large pharmaceutical company, it had great culture when it came to that. Being able to have those people within your organization that you can go to and trust, and meaning just your relationships that you have with people. I was very fortunate that I had 2 or 3 mentors in the company. And when I was going through a divorce, right, I could go sit down and say, look, I need about, I need to go to lunch because I need to share something with you, right? But what's interesting, when you talked about PTSD, in 2004, I was living in Florida and we were hit with Hurricane Ivan. So we were out of, the contents of 4 people's homes went through the bottom of my house. So my job, I would travel around the country and, to 15 to 20 days a month. So I was out of the field for 6 weeks. And I called up the director and I said, look, I just want to let you know, I can drive into town to get on the internet and on the phone. I'll do what I need to do. And he said, Jan, you are going through a bad situation. I'm going to take you off the books. You just stay at home, check in, call in. He said, but emotionally, you need some time. So we're good. I was so blessed to have somebody like that.
That is phenomenal.
But
phenomenal.
I have to share with you, though, from the flip side of that, 6 weeks in, we still hadn't had power. We had a generator at the house. So no AC or anything for 6 weeks. A coworker calls and said, hey, Jan, wanted to see what's going on. I didn't see your name on the roster for travel. I said, yeah. And she goes, well, what's going on? I said, well, I don't know if you noticed, but a hurricane, and I got the contents of 4 people's homes in the bottom of my house. And she goes, well, I didn't see anything on CNN about that. I thought, are you flipping kidding me? So the flip side.
So I want to stop. I want to stop real quick. Yeah, I want to stop that real quick because, okay, I will say, devil's advocate here, that I have had some employees tell me some wild stories over the years that were very easily verifiably not true. Okay. I once had somebody try to tell me that they had a major earthquake at their house when I was working in Dallas, Texas. We do not get major earthquakes. Okay. And bless you, Michaela.
Yeah.
She even muted herself to sneeze. Good one, Michaela. Yeah. So I've heard the whoppers, but first of all, when you initially hear those things, start with compassion, and maybe while you're talking to him, Google it, because then you can go ahead and call him out and go, well, okay, I'm not finding it. Can you tell me where I can locate that? That type of thing. But first of all, do not just immediately call someone a liar. Know for a fact that they are before you go there. Okay.
Yeah.
And number two, when somebody's having a trauma, let me just throw this on out there. And Michaela, please feel free to correct me if I am wrong. It is not helpful to have people attack you over your trauma.
It was
or
not.
to insist.
Disagree. It's actually very beneficial to have somebody gaslight you. And
just kidding. Yeah, that was a joke. She was totally joking. Yeah. So that's not helpful. And then the other one that just really boggles my mind are people that think that they're entitled to your trauma.
Oh yeah.
No.
Please elaborate on what you mean by entitled by
someone. In fact, I recently did a video on this. When somebody is going through a trauma, it is okay to ask them how they're doing. Okay. It is not okay to say, tell me about it. No. You are not entitled to details of their trauma or of their recovery process.
And it doesn't help. Okay. When you're making somebody repeat it over and over again, it's not helpful to the person.
You're not an exposure therapist, so don't try to be.
Right. And it's I understand it's coming from a good place most of the time. Okay. I want to throw that out there, guys. I know you're not trying to be right, but I'm telling you, that's why I'm telling you it's not okay. Please do not do that to somebody. You are also not entitled to tell somebody what is and is not a trauma.
Oh yeah, that's
right. It's not your choice, right? It's not your decision to decide that. Right?
There are, for instance, there are people who find it traumatic if something, and I mean truly traumatic, if something happens to their coworkers while they were away at lunch. Like let's say somebody breaks in with a gun or something like that, and technically the trauma didn't happen to them personally, but it's traumatic enough just that, oh my God, I could have been there. Oh my gosh, if a loved one goes through something really awful, for instance, we talked about sexual assault earlier, a lot of times the spouse will have trauma over that experience. And so you are not entitled to tell somebody else what is or is not a trauma. What is traumatic for somebody else will not be traumatic for you, and vice versa.
As humans, we all internalize things differently. We all handle things differently. We all have our own inner worlds, and there is no way to determine whether or not someone has a right to be traumatized by something. And I wanted to mention real quick that I very much appreciate what each one of you is saying, both Catherine and Jan, about just listening, just being there to listen and support. It's not about fixing it. And that's something I really want to talk about today. So often, and you sort of mentioned this earlier, Jan, that as humans, we really just, we want to sort of stay away from things. Like we want to stay away from pain. And so when we see someone in front of us in pain, our go-to is what we try to do for ourselves a lot and just fix it.
Right.
And so when you're talking, Jan, about your story with your boss giving you so much support and saying, you take your time, that's someone who's not trying to fix it. That's someone who's there to support you.
Right. Sorry, Michaela, I want to get Jan's, because we only have a few more minutes with Jan. So I want to ask her about that along what you're saying. So Jan, as somebody who's also then had to manage others and all of that, how do you handle an employee when you find out that an employee has had some kind of trauma, and how do you help them through that in the workplace?
I got to tell you, what that example of what was done for me was huge. And that was back in 2004. And the couple of employees that I have worked with, I just mirrored the same thing. I made sure that I stayed engaged and asked, as far as, is there anything, not how you're doing, but is there anything that I can do that you need that I might be able to help with? And, or and sending a text message, sending an email, checking in on you. Is there anything I can do? Just thinking of you. Right.
Right.
And making sure that that person knows that I'm there for them. But
Right.
it is difficult. I will say at some point it was difficult for me because I did want to fix it. I did want to fix it. So I had to pull it back and just remember Chet and how calm and confident and gave me that foundation of trust to allow me to work on it. So it was by example.
Good. And I want to say too, even if you just think that someone might have a trauma going on, please take the time to help them set up a success plan. That's kind of what I call them, a success plans. Let's sit back and talk about, okay, I can tell something's up. You don't need to tell me about it. Remember, because we're not going to ask them about their trauma. We're not entitled to that. But say, here are the things that I've noticed. Let's put something in place to cover this so that you can take care of whatever it is that you need to take care of and start working on this recovery process. I failed like that way as a manager once. There was not a known trauma, but I suspected. I did not put enough effort into that situation, and I failed as a manager with that. And that is the number one biggest regret of my career.
But that boundary, it's difficult, right? There is no
but it's not
win-win.
an excuse.
No, but
it's not an excuse.
But not to minimize how you felt, but it is a fine line.
It is.
It is a very fine line, because
at some point as an employer, they are responsible as an employee to do their job. You are responsible as an employer to take care of the company and your other employees. So yes, it is a fine line. It is. But if you think something's going on, still handle it as though you know there is, just in case. Now, if you figure out later that's not it, okay, then proceed differently. But I would recommend always start from the standpoint of maybe something's going on. Because another time, an employee of mine just suddenly started acting real snippy and rude. I mean, this was like the best guy that came in, got everybody energized every day and all this. And one day just got real snippy and just snarky with everybody. And I called him and I go, dude, okay, what's going on? What's happening? Tell me what's going on. I knew something was wrong. I just knew it. And his wife had tried to commit suicide. And I said, and he didn't have PTO, so he didn't feel like he could call in. I said, get out of here. I will handle it. You will have all of your hours on your check. Go.
Right.
But you come from that softer place.
There's a lot of grace out there. There's a lot of grace out there. We just have to reach out to people and ask for grace, right?
Yeah. And that's a great way to end your segment. That is the best. That's your mic drop. That was your mic drop. Grace. There's lots of grace out there. Just remember to ask for it. So Jan, thank you so much for coming. And guys, I have dropped all the links for the people that have come on the show today in the comments today. So if you want to connect with anybody, go through the comments, connect with them on LinkedIn, reach out. Everybody here is amazing. Jan, any final words that you want to say past your mic drop? Anything you want to promote that's coming up?
Well, coming up, of course, is our HR Disruptor Summit. We're going to have a mental wellness panel event, and also,
I'll be on it.
Yeah, I know. I'm so excited. And also, of course, your amazing ATS system. So I'm excited about that. Really excited about the mental wellness panel. So thanks again, ladies.
Me too. Thank you, Jan. Have a great rest of the day.
Bye.
Bye. I love Jan. Yeah. I do. She's so amazing.
Always informative to have her on.
Yeah. And I loved what she said about grace.
Yeah.
I really did.